Got our shift tower on. What I'm going to do now, I split it here for the sole purpose of, one thing was the tractor didn't move and I didn't want to have to roll the whole back end of the tractor out of the shop to kind of pressure wash and clean this off. And that's mainly the reason I split it here, so I could crane it off and take this thing outside and get it cleaned up because it was such a filthy mess. So other than that, it's a good idea to look at these spines right here that run your pump shaft, and that's your input shaft there. Look at your spines in there. This clutch, we replaced this clutch not too long ago when we did all the work last time. Hey guys, so um, as I'm rolling this 3155 together, and it's kind of, there's not real exciting video footage here. It's just me rolling the tractor back together, and it's taken a little while. For one reason is that I don't usually split tractors in this part of the shop. It's over here by the actual car lift, and there's not a whole lot of room. Usually I do it in the other part of the shop where I can get my service truck in beside it. And even if I do roll them apart, and if I have to roll one and split it apart and it gets a little bit unsquare when I'm rolling it back together and doesn't meet up like I want it to, that's one nice thing about having the bigger service truck with the bigger crane. I'll either grab the back end of the tractor or I'll grab the front end of the tractor and I'll just lift it up and move it till it is square. But being as I've got the JCB loader and parts scattered all behind it in the way, and there's not really enough room for me to lift on it through the other door, because the doors are only like 12-foot doors, so there's not a whole lot of room there by the time the roll-up door goes to move my crane around and boom up. I'm just gonna have to do it the hard way, and I'll just roll it back and forth and turn the tires till I get it squared up to where it'll meet up halfway decent and get it splined up. Because if you don't get them squared up, it's, halfway close, it's just a real pain. You'll never get the input shaft and the pump drive splines to lock in. And when I first was a young mechanic and first started splitting tractors, there was a couple of them that I really fought. But if I'm doing like a clutch job on one of these tractors and that's all I'm doing, I mean, I'll just roll it far enough apart to where I can get my skinny little body in between it and pull the clutch off and change the rear seal or whatever I got to do there, and then I'll just throw the clutch back on it, and then I'll roll it back together. And sometimes I'll use a come along on the bigger tractors, like if you're doing like a 4960 or something with a heavy engine, you've got a lot more weight on that splitting stand, and sometimes they don't want to roll so good. So I'll use a come along. I'll take a chain and I'll wrap a chain from from each axis, from each final drive housing on the rear end to the front axle, and I'll just pull it together with a come along on each side. Just go a little bit on each side and kind of pull it in square. I've done that a lot too. But another thing I wanted to touch on was the road grader. I didn't expound on it very much, and I should have, but we did, because I had a lot of questions, people asking me, was there water and anything else on there? So I've come to the conclusion this whole thing was just caused by rainwater and probably lack of use by the fish and game. We did check the upper hydraulic tank. We checked the lower hydraulic tank. We checked, there's a lower hydraulic tank there on the pump drive, down there by the pump drive where the front crank dampener is on the engine. We checked the chain boxes where the drive axles are. We checked the rear end, and there's no evidence of any water in any of it. It actually looks really good. So more than likely what happened on this whole situation, as you guys remember, when I pulled the cylinder head off, I showed you a little bit of, you could see evidence of where the pistons had moved in the bores a little bit, So what I think happened, well, this is one of two ways this went down. I know well, to expound on that a little bit, I know from our local Fish and Game office here in Butte Valley and the one on State Line Road, those guys buy pretty damn nice equipment, and it never gets used. They don't do anything with it. These guys here in Butte Valley have got like an 8760 John Deere articulated wheel tractor, and I think in the last 5 years I might have seen a wheel turn twice on it. It just sits there and the tires rot off of them. I mean, you talk about a nice old cat. They've got like a D6G over there that's, man, that thing, if it ever goes up for auction, I'm going to be all over that one, because I know it never gets used. It's got and I don't understand why the Fish and Game needs a winch. Why do they need a winch cat? Anyways, that's a whole different subject. We're getting off subject here. Anyway, so what I'm saying is, I know the road grader more than likely sat down there, wherever it came from, down there in Central California, and it probably never got used. It probably sat in the rain with no cap over the stack, and it just, even though it had a 90-degree bend on the stack, I've seen them do that before. If it's raining sideways and blowing 30, 40 miles an hour, there's going to get water down the stack on them 90-degree bends. And it probably did that year after year after year, and then somebody finally decided to go use the grader, and they went to start the grader, and it wouldn't start, and it was seized up. And either that piston movement happened when they initially tried to start it, or that happened when they called a mechanic out to come and see why the grader wouldn't start. Maybe he got the thing to turn that far and told him, hey, your grader's screwed. You got water in your oil there, monkey. So more than likely, they probably just cold the grader out, because them government outfits, they get a lot of the budget. They can spend so much money every year, and if they don't spend that same amount of money every year, they lose that. So basically, they probably, it was probably either they waited a year. I don't know how it went down. Either they waited a year and got their budget money back and bought a brand new grader and put that one on for auction and just did without a grader, or maybe they had the money right away and just went and got another grader. I don't know. But anyways, instead of fixing it, they decided to just go get a new grader, I'm sure, because that's how the government works. The rest of us that don't have any money, we have to fix what we have. So we probably would have learned from our mistake and fixed the engine in the grader and made sure there was a can or something over the stack next time you didn't use it. So anyways, I'm almost 100% certain that's, well, some of you guys said there was, brought up a pretty good point. There could have been sabotage, but I don't really know I don't really think a tree hugger would have vandalized the grader, because to be honest with you, the tree huggers and the Fish and Game are on the same side, so that doesn't really make sense. I really don't think it was vandalism. I don't really think it was a bitter employee, because be honest with you, around here in California, if you work for the Fish and Game, you got a pretty cush gravy job and you get paid pretty well. So there really isn't really a reason to have a grievance with the Fish and Game if you're an employee, unless you're just mad because you don't do any work. I don't know. So anyways, that's kind of what I've attributed this whole thing to, is rainwater, and I just thought I would elaborate on that a little bit more, since I didn't do that in the previous two videos. So we did check all that out. So anyways, on that 8.3, we've got the block stripped down. I'm going to go back in the shop Monday morning, and I'll just bring it home with me Monday afternoon when I come home, and then we'll take it into the outfit that's going to hot tank it for me and get it cleaned up. I'm going to take the crank and the camshaft to a machine shop in Medford, because to be honest with you, our local machine shops, if you don't want to get anything done in a timely manner, you take it in there, because I don't know what it is with those guys. They won't hire any more help, and me, I'll work longer hours and get the job done. Those guys there, they're only going to put in their 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and that's all they're going to do, even though they're 3 months behind. They don't, and they could care less. So I just finally gave up on them, and I don't take anything to them anymore, because they just took forever, and then I had customers mad at me because they couldn't get their equipment back. And finally, anyways, I gave up on the machine shops in my local area here, so I I drive an hour and a half away, and those guys over there, they get it done. I'll drop an engine block off or a head over there, and in 2 or 3 days they're calling me, telling me to come get it. So it's very, very convenient. And you go into a machine shop over there, and there's like 10 guys, and 10 guys in there doing machine work, and they're actually turning products out. So anyways, we're going to be taking the cam and the crank over there and see if they either got to grind it, or the cam. I know they won't have to do any. They'll just have to polish the cam. The cam sat high enough up in the block, it hardly has any damage on it, but we're just going to have them clean it up. The crank, they might have to grind on it a little bit, and I don't think so. I think they can polish it and it'll be just fine. But that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to get the kit coming, and basically we're going to change all 6 rods, pistons, liners, rings, have the block hot tanked and cleaned out, and I think we're going to have a damn fine engine. We're going to see the turbo. That's another thing that I completely forgot about. That turbo, the water ran through it and got it seized up because it was seized. Won't turn at all. So that makes me think there that it wasn't vandalism. I think the rain just went down the exhaust stack over the years because they didn't use it, and this is the result of it. So I'm going to have to take that turbo apart and see if I need to just do that. I'll take that turbo apart and see how bad it is, and I might be able to just order a kit and put that back together myself, because I doubt the turbo was really, very bad before this happened. It probably just got water in the bearing cartridge there and has everything stuck. So anyways, on this tractor, to change the subject, another thing I wanted to touch on is some of you guys. I know there's a lot of experienced guys out there that watch this channel too. But some of you guys that are wanting to learn, just something I want to touch on is when you're doing these jobs, and even if you're putting a bell housing, if you're taking a 15 speed or 18 speed or whatever and putting it in a truck, you'll see a little gap here that I've got between the engine and the clutch housing. You'll see me, I'm kind of pulling it in with the bolts, but if you're gonna do this, it's just experience. If you get both your dowels lined up on each side, and you're looking at your gap, and your gap's pretty low, and you're pretty certain you're 100% splined up. I've seen guys do this, and I've seen guys just grab an impact and just start ripping and tearing, and it's going to break stuff. You're either going to break the case on that transmission. I've seen guys on Eaton transmissions do that, and those aluminum bell housings on some of them Eaton transmissions, it'll just crack the bell housing. They're done, and then you got to pull it back off and change the bell housing. But anyways, it's just when you're pulling if you're going to do this and you're going to try to pull them together just a little bit, see what I'm doing? I'm just kind of going from side to side and just a little bit here and a little bit there, turning the bolts. You can feel it by hand, and you can tell if something's coming up tight. That bolt, I mean, it's just common sense. You can feel those bolts when they're pulling in, and you know when it's right, and you know when it's wrong. If it's coming up tight and it ain't moving and coming any closer together, stop and back it off, and then figure out another plan. And as I'm doing it here, I'm just kind of going from side to side. It's pulling in, and sometimes I'll come up to the top, like that one part of the video there. I came up there and I noticed that it was pulling in on the top, but it wasn't really doing much on the bottom. So I backed it back off on the top, and then I went down to the bottom and started pulling it in a little more. So just a word of caution. I'm not trying to preach or anything, but it's just I've seen the mistakes happen, and I've made them too. I've actually, to be honest with you, I've never broke a bell housing, but I have, to be honest with you, on an old, what was it, a Massey, I think it was a Massey 2705. What the heck was I? I was putting a clutch pack in there, and I remember there was a spring-loaded pack, and something wasn't lined quite right up, and I just was in a hurry, and I grabbed an impact, and I zipped it down. And I cracked it, and I was moonlighting. I was working at an actual company at the time, but I was doing a little moonlighting on the side there for another farmer, and I didn't have any money, and I just called him and told him about it and was honest with him, and he said, "I'll just take it off the bill," and I did. I think we got another housing for that pack from a tractor salvage yard, and it ended up costing me $650, and I only made about $300 on the whole job. So. That's one of those things right there you learn the hard way and you'll never do it again. But as you can see here, she's finally closing up and I'm tightening everything up. So just word of caution when you're doing one of these, and don't just go get your impact and start zipping things together, because bad things can happen and it'll cost you a lot of money.
Well guys, I think we'll go test drive it before we put the loader frames on. I've already started it and all that stuff. Go drive it a little bit down the road here. I never get the door open. Okay, what I'm gonna do is climb on there and just back over the top of these things. Make a walk around, clean up the mess when I get done here. So, we had no steering before, and you can always tell. Sometimes it's not a for certain thing, but usually if you've got no charge pressure, your PTO clutch brake won't work. See how it's turning right now? It takes hydraulic pressure for that PTO clutch brake to work on that independent PTO shaft. And another thing is just check and make sure your PTO works. We didn't have any PTO, we had no steering, and we had no hydraulics back here. And we had no high-low shift. Oh. Gal here. I got a set of jumper cables in here. Reverse. I got the clutch blade. These got a slave cylinder on them, like a pickup almost. It's hydraulic. You gotta bleed them when you get done with them. Oh, we got good steering. Looks really good, actually. Let's go second. Get the tilt wheel down here. Yeah, okay. Okay. For some reason, fucking high-low's not shifting for some reason. I gotta look at that. Whoa, here we go. Definitely steers really well. Figure out what's going on with that high-low shifter and why it's not shifting. Check your hydraulics too, make sure the hydraulics are working. I'm gonna have to pop this panel back off the floor here and see why this is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. Yeah, something ain't right with that. Kind of weird. I shifted it before when I was sitting there in the shop. Now all of a sudden I don't want to shift. Something's not right there. Let's see if the hitch raises up and down on it. That's another thing we didn't have, was no hitch. As you can see them hitch arms. Working now. You can do her with one finger. That's the way it's supposed to work. Well, I guess I better pop this panel off, see why the high-low isn't shifting, but other than that, linkage pins hanging up or something, who knows. It's something on that shift linkage right there, because it's just bound up. All it is a little spool valve on that top cover. It ain't much to it. We better set that. Okay. And there is no step here because that's part of the loader frame, which is not on there. Make sure everything is, I gotta pressure wash it again. Yeah. Sure there ain't no leaks. Alrighty, I guess I need to see what's going on with that high-low shifter, see what the problem is there. Well, it's I think I got it working just fine. As soon as I pulled the cover off, it's shifting now. Something on the cover here is binding up on the linkage. So I'll make sure that when you're going down the road that it shifts. Put her in second. That's your 2-speed. High-low. Okay, well, I gotta figure out why the cover it's hitting that. Doesn't quite make much sense to me because nothing's sticking up any higher than what it was before. Maybe I had it off this lip a little bit or something to where it was down too far. Anyway, well, I'm going to finish this thing up. I'm going to drag the loader frames out and finish this problem out, and then it's nothing serious. Everything works, so I just got to figure out why the cover's hanging up on the high-low shift linkage.